Hey family, welcome to today's video. Now, I previously had a Form 843 video that was on the YouTube channel, but the IRS actually revised this form in December of 2024, so I had to take that down and I'm just now getting around to replacing it. So, in this video, we're going to cover the updated Form 843, talk about what it's for. We're going to go over a brief example, and then if you have any other questions, you can drop them down in the comments, okay? If you're new here, my name is Timolyn Bowens, and I am America's favorite EA. As an enrolled agent, I'm licensed through the Internal Revenue Service to represent taxpayers all over the world if they have an IRS tax problem. So, one of the things that I do when I represent taxpayers is I make an assessment of any penalties that they have, and I do a review with them after that assessment to see if they are eligible for penalty abatement. Okay, so that's where this form comes into play. Form 843 is claim for refund and request for abatement. Abatement simply means to forgive. So to have the IRS forgive and remove the penalties. Now, with that being said, there are different types of tax penalties that can be abated. In the example that we're going to focus on today, we're going to be looking at a failure to file penalty for income tax for an individual. Okay. Now, I do want to give you a warning that this form is not for requesting abatement of income, estate, or gift tax. Okay? Do not use it to request a refund of income tax or additional Medicare tax. That can actually be done on a form with the 1040. Okay? In addition to that, employers cannot use this form to request a refund or an abatement of Federal Insurance Contributions Act tax, which is FICA, their employee taxes, or any Railroad Retirement Tax Act tax, which is RRTA, anything that's paid on behalf of railroad employees, or income tax withholding. Again, that's going to be done on a different tax form for them. That's going to be done on the 941 with additional paperwork. So now that we're focused here, let's talk about what this is for. Okay, so you can request a refund or abatement for any tax other than income, estate, or gift tax. Now, I'm not going to go into all the detail here, but if you are a subscriber to Tax Tips with Timlin or on America's Favorite EA, I am going to actually be doing an article that is part of the paid tier where I go into more detail about this. Okay. Next, abatement or refund of tax that can't be claimed on any form except Form 843. So, as I mentioned before, with the example of the excess of additional Medicare tax, that can be claimed on a 1040 in the additional schedules. That's why you don't use 843 for it. But if there is a tax that can't be claimed on the 1040 or it can't be claimed with the 941, that's when you would use the 843. Okay? Now, if you're on the channel, I'm going to make the assumption that you can read these next. Let me see, one, two, three, four are pretty straightforward as the ones that are above it. So I'm going to drop right down to the penalty. This is where myself as an enrolled agent, CPAs who do tax representation work, and tax attorneys find ourselves the most abating penalties. So in this example, we're requesting the abatement or refund of a penalty or addition to tax due to reasonable cause or other reason allowed under law. Now, let me be very, 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 very clear with this. If you have already paid the penalty, you have 2 years from the date that you paid to make a request for the refund. There is something called an RSED, which is a refund statute expiration date, which again is going to be 2 years after you've made the payment. If you haven't made the payment yet, that's where the request for abatement comes into play. So if that request is granted, what the IRS does is they credit your account for that amount. Okay? So when we're looking at this, all right, in this example, that's what we're looking at. Again, I'm not going to do every single line as far as a walkthrough. If you have questions about the other lines, drop them down in the comments. So, when we go to fill out your information, we need to make sure that it matches exactly with the tax year in question that the penalty has been applied to. Okay. So for this taxpayer, we have a single taxpayer. We have test E client. All right. Social security number 555 Now, with this tax return, there was no spouse listed. So it's important to note that we are looking at the specific tax period. When you're working with this taxpayer, or maybe you are the taxpayer and you are going to make this claim for refund, you want to make sure that the information again matches the specific period we're looking at. So it's 2025 right now. We're looking at a 2023 penalty. Maybe you got married in 2024. Because we're looking at a tax period before you got married, you will not list your spouse here. Okay? So we're going to have the address. So in this example, we have 102 North 7th Street. Check this out. They're in Louisville, Kentucky, just like me. There is no EIN because it's for an individual client. If we were abating a penalty for a business, this is where the EIN would go. Okay? Louisville, Kentucky is right here in the United States. So no foreign country name, province, state, county, no foreign postal code. Okay. And then this is where if there has been a name change, somebody got married, we would update or we would make the IRS aware of that. Okay. So whenever you're communicating with the IRS, when you're looking at the address, you want to make sure that they have the address where you currently stay and where you get mail. And then this section here lets us make them aware of if it was different on the return. Okay? So we'll put what was actually on the return right here. Daytime telephone. Currently, the IRS is at about a third of what they were when the year started. So I don't think at this present time they'll have any time to call you. But in the event that they do, you want to make sure you have the most up-to-date number. Now, the penalty is connected to the 2023 tax year. So that's why we have January 1st, 2023 here. The ending date is going to be December 31st, 2023. Now, the amount to be refunded or abated is going to be this 2,500. So, what I've done here, a common penalty that I see taxpayers face is the failure to file penalty. If you are not aware of it and you have a tax balance, it may be the very reason why your tax balance is bigger than what you estimated. The failure to file penalty is 5% of the tax that you owe for each month that the filing is late. Now, fortunately for you, it maxes out at 25%, but 25% can still be a huge number. So in this example, the tax due was $10,000. It was 5 months late, so 25% of 10,000 is this 2,500 here. Okay, so we're requesting all of that to be abated. No payments have been made toward it yet, so it's still sitting on the account. So we don't have to worry about 3A, 3A through L, okay? No payments have been made. Now, when we get to line 4, it says check the box or boxes with the type of tax or fee for which you are asking a refund or abatement. Or check the boxes with the type of tax or fee to which the interest, penalty, or addition to tax is related. Check only one box unless an exception applies. Okay, again, you're a grown up, you can read, you can look at the instructions for special situations. For our taxpayer here, Test E client, we're dealing with income tax, okay? Because they filed their 1040 5 months late. This penalty is connected to that. So we're going to go to the next page. And when you're preparing the 843, you want to make sure on the second page that the client name and social security number is here at the top. And if you have to turn in any additional pages to give supplemental information, you want to make sure that the client's name as it appears on the return, as well as their social security number is on there as well. Okay. So line 5, we're going to indicate the type of fee or return, if any, filed to which the tax, interest, penalty, or addition to tax relates. So as I've stated before, this is connected to a 1040. So we're going to check box I right here with the 1040. So for example, if this was employment tax with FICA, we would be checking the D, right, for 941. If this was related to FUTA, the Federal Unemployment Tax Act, we'd be checking C, 940. All right. But again, in this example, we're looking at I, so we're going to check that box for the 1040. Now, the IRS wants you to understand what you're requesting, where it is in the revenue code, where it discusses this penalty, and the potential removal of it. So here it says if the claim or request involves a penalty, enter the Internal Revenue Code section on which the penalty is based. So here, because it's failure to file, that's covered in section 6651A1. Now, if that's the penalty you're facing, cool. And again, if I didn't do this already, I apologize. Let me give this disclaimer. This is not legal tax advice for your specific situation or the specific situation of your client. This is for educational purposes only. Okay? Now, if you're looking at a different penalty, you would have to pull that code section. All right. So if this so far matches your scenario, that's awesome, but I'm not going to do all the work for you. When we get to line 7, we're going to check the box that indicates your reason for the request for refund or abatement. So we have interest was assessed as a result of an IRS error or delays. A penalty or addition to tax was the result of erroneous written advice from the IRS. C, reasonable cause or other reason allowed under the law can be shown. Or D, none of the above reasons apply. Now, in this situation, we have C, reasonable cause or other reason allowed under the law can be shown. This is not a get out of jail free card. So you actually have to be able to give them something that qualifies as reasonable cause. And then in addition to that, you have to substantiate that claim. So that's what line 8 is for. They give you the opportunity to explain why you believe this claim or request should be allowed and show how you computed the amount shown on line 2. If you need more space, attach additional sheets. Those additional sheets are where you're going to want to make sure that the taxpayer name and social security number have been added. Now, going back to line 2, remember the amount that we wanted to abate is this 2,500. So we need to give a reason for this taxpayer to not just have filed the return late, but why is it 5 months or more late? Okay, because the IRS may decide to partially refund or abate the penalty, or you could get the full thing. And this is where I said I'm not going to do all of the work for you by giving you an example here, but there are some things that the IRS looks at as reasonable cause. Those things include, but are not limited to, a death in the immediate family of the taxpayer, inability to obtain records, but they have to have reasonably been trying to obtain records. If there was a natural disaster or other related instance where the taxpayer's records were destroyed. So, for example, if there was a house fire or a business fire, then that would be something. Right now, here in Kentucky, the whole state has an extension until November 3rd for both individual and business returns due to flooding. Now, that would count as a natural disaster. Not everyone was directly affected. However, if the IRS hadn't already declared that for the state of Kentucky, that's an example of something that could be used as reasonable cause. Okay. Now, if you'd like to learn about more things that are eligible for reasonable cause, then by all means, you can check out tax tips with, not tax tips. You can check out Tax Tips with Timlin because there is an article that covers reasons why the IRS may forgive a penalty. But you can also check out Tax Relief with Timlin Bowens, where I talk about first time penalty abatement, where you don't have to fill out this form and you can actually verbally make the request. And I also talk about reasonable cause abatement and some of the reasons that the IRS accepts. Okay. Now, this form is not going to be valid until the taxpayer has signed it and dated, and if there is a spouse that was on the return for the tax period in question here, they would have to sign and date as well. I do want to point out that if the taxpayer has an identity protection PIN, that must be entered as well. Okay. Now, if you are a tax professional and you are preparing this for the taxpayer, you need to fill out your information in the same way that you would if we were looking at a tax return like a 1040. Okay, so I have myself here in the example. We have Timlin S. Bowens. I would date it. I'd put my P10 in here. Didn't put that in because you guys don't need all my information like that, right? My firm's EIN, the firm phone number. So if the IRS has any questions about this, they can reach out to me. And then the firm's name. All right. With this, if you are representing the taxpayer and you filled out this form for pay, if the CAF unit has not processed your 2848 yet, you likely need to also include in this packet a copy of your signed 2848 so that the person or persons processing this form know that any response needs to also be sent to you as the power of attorney. Okay? Now, if you're thinking, all right, this is cool, a lot of different possibilities here for clients who are facing different penalties. You can find out whether or not they have a penalty by looking at the tax transcripts, looking at the income amount owed, and then the additional penalties and tax. If you are an individual, you can look in your IRS account, look at the different tax years, look at what type of penalties there are and what type of interest. That can help you decide on whether or not you want to fill out the Form 843 yourself or hire somebody to do it. Again, this is not legal strategy or advice for your specific case. I also want to point out that this form is available for free online by going to irs.gov. But if you're a tax professional and you are going to be preparing a lot of these, you may want to consider using a tax resolution software. The tax resolution software that I use is Pitbull Tax, okay? And because I have a following of enrolled agents and tax professionals like you, I actually have a promo code that, disclaimer, I will get a commission fee from if you decide to use it. But in addition to that, you'll also get a discount. Okay. So the promo code is GGCGXS and the website is pitbulltax.com. Now, I'll put the promo code again, GGCGXS, down in the notes description. Sorry, I'm not doing a podcast, but I'll also put a link there too, because that may be easier for you to just click on. If you have any questions at all, please put them down in the comments. If you're a taxpayer facing penalties that are just drowning you in addition to the debt, I want to invite you to also book a call with me at bowenstaxsolutions.com to see if you're a good fit to work with my firm. All right. But remember, even if you don't work with me, be sure to get the help that you need. All right. I'll see you guys in the next video.